Hey there, it's Chris with Acting Creative. And on today's very special episode of a Handwoven interview, I am talking to Amanda Baxter. Amanda owns a business called Shiny Dime Fibers, which is all hand painted, hand dyed Tencel yarn. She's based out of Indiana, which I love. She's a fellow Hoosier. It's awesome. We had such a good time chatting about her background and the business, and I think you're going to love it. So please enjoy this episode of a Handwoven interview with Amanda Baxter. Hello, my friend Amanda Baxter. How are you? I'm so glad you're here.
I'm glad to be here.
Excellent. Very good. Well, we are just going to dive right in. Now, the viewers should know that Amanda and I are both Hoosiers and live in the great state of Indiana. And that is part of how we've known each other for a number of years now, which has been wonderful just to find fellow fiber lovers and artists in Indiana. So, Amanda, give us a little taste of what your background is in fiber arts and how you came to be here.
I started at the Kansas City Art Institute, or I guess I should back up even farther if you want the whole story.
I want the whole story. Lay it on us.
I went to college for way too long because I couldn't make up my mind. Started at Truman State in Kirksville, Missouri, where I got my visual communications degree and thought I was going to be a graphic designer because that's what art people do to make money. And I thought I was terrible at it and I didn't care. But I love to do fibery things. I had taken a couple of dyeing classes for making quilts and things of that nature. And so I decided, I'm just going to get another degree. And I went, actually, because I'm clueless, I was like, who teaches textiles? This college in Savannah, Georgia does. Maybe they'll offer me a master's degree because I have no portfolio whatsoever. And I went down there and they suggested that perhaps instead I would prefer going to an art school in Kansas City. Then we went to the Kansas City Art Institute. The first class I took was with a wonderful woman, Pauline. Not Pauline. Yes, Pauline.
Okay. Polly.
Paulas and Polly. I've got a lot of Paulas and Paulines in my life. I have to go back.
I like that.
Pauline Cowart, she taught weaving and I fell in love and I've been with it ever since. So at that school, I learned all about dyeing yarn and weaving and that's kind of where I fell in love with what I do. I took a residency in Tennessee for a couple of years at the Appalachian Center for Craft.
Where's that located, Amanda, in Tennessee?
Where is it? Smithville is about an hour and a half east of Nashville, right off of the interstate there. So
okay.
Really.
And you were there for how many years? Is this
3
2,
years.
3? Wow. Awesome.
3 full years. And then I came up to Indiana to pursue a master's of fine art from Indiana University. So
go Hoosiers. See, we're both graduates of IU too. See, it's like we're twins.
So yeah, I didn't know where I was gonna end up after this, but I found my husband and now I live on a farm in Indiana, and this is where I live permanently now.
I love that. Okay, so on the farm, do you grow things for dyeing? Is that part of what, are you working on that? Some kind of dye garden?
I'm going to get there eventually. I currently grow indigo. One of the reasons I came to IU is because of Roland Ricketts, this sort of like big shot indigo dyer in our very small pond of other people.
I love it.
Large fish, tiny pond. But I wanted to learn about natural dyes from him, and at the very least I am now growing it. It started with I kind of learned the process of growing and processing indigo for an indigo vat, and so now I grow it on a very small scale plot in my garden, and I haven't done anything with it yet. I keep growing it and drying it and putting it away, and one of these days I'm going to actually learn how to dye with it, because there's the growing it from plant and processing it. That's a whole thing to learn.
That's a whole art form, isn't it? It's really, they're very different things. Yeah.
And then there's the actually putting it in a vat and using it, which is its own, especially if you choose to do a living vat, it requires, constant care, like a small child. So,
And you
have to
have
feed
it in
it.
your house already.
Yeah, you can feed it and take care of it. And if you don't, it dies.
This sounds like having a sourdough starter. This sounds like
It is
that kind of
exactly
idea.
like having a sourdough starter. You go out and you gotta take care of it every day. Otherwise, it does not make it. And there's some other vats too that I'd like to try, but there's just so many different. There's so much to know about it, and I just haven't gotten there. So
Yeah, you will. We have no doubt. We have no doubt that you will get there for sure. For sure. Okay, so your company is Shiny Dime Fibers, which is a brilliant name. Can you give us a little background? Because when I first met you, you hadn't started Shiny Dime yet. I think it was still Amanda Baxter. Was it studio?
yeah, there's just
Yeah.
my name in the studio.
Yeah. So tell us about kind of you started Shiny Dime a couple of years ago and kind of the history. What got you there?
Well, the best way to start that. I think I have been working through some personal trauma of losing my sister from a long time ago. She's been gone longer than she was alive at this point, but I still haven't done a very good job of healing from that. And when I very first started to think I might be into textiles, it was actually through knitting. And my mom and I both learned to knit together. I was in college, she was at home with my sister, but she was spending just days and days in a hospital room with her. And when you're in a hospital, it's just, time is irrelevant. You don't know day from night. The lights are on all the time. And it's just, it is very much just a liminal, you don't know what's going on with your life, but she just needed to do something productive while she was there. She was there all the time. So she learned to knit, and I learned to knit with her while I was in college. And I got, can't say hooked because they're needles, but I
like it. That's a fiber joke. That's a fiber.
A lot. And while we were going through all of this, I knit a lot. And it was for us, that was something that was important for us to keep busy, to keep as a way to kind of work through,
like coping mechanism.
Yeah, to cope. And so so I did that for a long time, and then I found weaving and fell in love with it, and knitting kind of went up, but
I understand. Yep.
Well, I still like knitting, but I really like weaving more. So for me, it all started kind of as a coping mechanism and as a way of healing. And so when I was trying to figure out which direction I wanted to go with my business, and I started working with a designer to help me come up with a new logo, she and I came up with that name together, because you can, if you want to know the story of Shiny Dime, it's
we can include the blog. I know you have a lovely blog post about that.
Yeah,
you can
you can go to the blog and read why it's called Shiny Dime specifically. But that is in dedication to her. And so I'm still processing that in some ways. I never let myself process it for many years because it's just too difficult. And so now I'm doing, that's my whole business. So I'm like, well, I'm going to use this as a way to kind of boost my self-esteem, and to do something that I love, that I find a lot of comfort in, as a lifestyle, and see what happens. And of course, because I'm in the fiber community, everybody is super supportive of everything. They all have wonderful things to say all the time. So it's the perfect community to be a member of.
It is. I agree. It is a very supportive, I think, because especially weavers, we're a small but mighty crew. So I think when we talk to each other, then we're very much like, oh my God, I'm so happy to see you. Like that. It's just this, it's a really, I couldn't agree more. It's very supportive, very like we're just excited to connect with fellow weavers.
It's helpful too. And you sometimes you muck up a little bit, and everybody has been just very calm and patient with me when I taught my first dyeing workshop at a fiber festival in Indiana last month, I think, and I was just a wreck.
Were you nervous? Really?
Yeah. Now that I have two children, it's hard for me to put a lot of thought into anything for very long, just all over the place.
That makes sense. Yeah.
Mom ADHD constantly. And so when I got there, and it was also at a festival, so I didn't have any time to set up, and I just kind of whirlwind through it. And at the end of it, I had 3 people, and it seemed like a great time. And even though I was just like, I don't even think, but I introduced myself to these people. I'm just like, here, let's start. And
That's awesome.
They were so pleasant. And I've come, over the years, I've taught different workshops of weaving and whatnot. And I never feel very confident when I'm teaching, but everybody's always very supportive because they're just so happy to be there. I want
so
to do it, and I'm doing it. So that's great.
Yeah. Right? Yeah, exactly. Okay, so for folks that aren't familiar with Shiny Dime Fibers, tell them what kind of things do you sell? What do you make? What's part of your business model?
I sell Tencel yarn, and the reason I sell Tencel yarn, when I was an undergrad, I worked with a particular type of 5/2 Tencel, which is a particular gauge. It's a little bit heavier than what's on the market typically. I even reached out one time to Webb's and asked them if they would ever carry it, and I got a rather short no from them. And so
they were like, no, thank you.
I got frustrated, and I was like, okay, no. I flipped their cone over and I looked at their mill, and I thought, I'm just going to call their mill and ask them if they'll make it for me. And I did.
Yeah.
And so, since when you order from a mill, you buy a pallet of yarn. So that's
a lot of yarn. Yes. Yeah.
So yeah. Okay, now I have to sell it because that's a lot more yarn than I'll use in my lifetime. So that's how it started. I wanted a particular yarn, and I saw it wasn't on the market, so I just went and got some.
Yeah. And when it comes to you, then you transform it by I know you do some hand painting. Do you like dye, like dip dye too, or how does that work? What's your method?
I hand paint or I immersion dye. So I'll put it in a bucket and let it soak in a dye bath for a long time. I do either one of those.
Yeah. Very cool. Well, and if you for our watchers, if you haven't checked out your color combinations are always on point, Amanda. They're always amazing. Just that kind of ombre, like changing from one color to the next. I love it. It's and having personally worked with your stuff, it's a great quality. I love your work for sure.
The other great thing about Tencel is it's never ugly. It doesn't matter what color you make. It's not ugly.
Right? Yeah. Yeah. Well,
brown, and it is beautiful gold. I don't know what to tell you.
Yeah. Well, and for anyone who hasn't worked with Tencel has an actual shine to it. So it has it has a little kind of like a glittery, glamorous something to it. I mean, it's a very cool fiber. I find that the times I've working with it, don't have any trouble with it breaking. I mean, I've never had trouble with that before. I think it's it seems to be it's like a much more glamorous cotton. I mean, I think it's for me, I found it to be very reliable, sturdy, but much flashier.
It's fun. If I was going to offer some tips for working with Tencel, I would say it's very strong, it's sturdy. It does, however, not like to be rubbed a whole lot. So if you're drawing in a lot on your loom, your edge yarns may fray and break eventually. That is something I've noticed. That, if you're drawing in a lot, make sure you're not. But I've never had any problem with any of my selvages breaking or anything like that when I weave with it. I think it's just a matter of how you weave or what you're weaving, to just watch out for that. So that's a pointer.
That's a great tip. And I ask all my guests for a tip. So that is a brilliant tip. We'll take it for sure. So tell us what's next for you and for the business, and what do you have coming up?
I am working on teaching more dyeing classes, because I think this is a lot of fun to paint and dye this yarn. You really can't screw up. If you can get the dye on the yarn and you remember to put the fixative on it, because that's important. That's important part. Yeah, that's the important part. Getting the dye to fix onto the yarn is important. So if you can do that, you can't make it ugly. So I think it's just fun to show people like how I want to see if people can do this at home, because and also when I was at IU, I taught some color classes. When you're a master's student, you have to teach. You have to
TA, right? Yeah, teaching assistant. Sure.
I was actually an associate instructor of color and design. It's great.
Oh, even fancier, Amanda. I love that.
That's where I really learned. I'm not really designed for academia, but I did have fun teach with the lessons we were teaching, and it's all about color, and so I kind of want to work at least in simple ways, just putting color on yarn with at least some intention. So the first workshop I taught, I had everybody sit down and just make some color stories for themselves so that when they went to go paint their yarn, they had some idea of where they were headed. And then I attempted to show them how to mix colors, but I got to figure out that part better. That was a bit of a mess, but it's hard because when you look at wet dye, you have no idea what color you're going to get until the yarn is washed and dried. And so it's like you just gotta kind of go for it and learn. And I've only know what I know because I've dyed like 10,000 samples.
Right, because of your years of experience. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, 10,000, and I'm still learning. The first 2 years I learned all my recipes have had to change because my son went to preschool. So I was immersion dyeing my yarn, and I was under the impression that the dyes were exhausted after a couple of hours. So there was really no reason to leave it in any longer. So I would take my yarn out and I'd wash it. But then my son was in preschool and my day was cut shorter. So I have to leave at 2:45 to go get him. And so I just say, all right, I'm just gonna leave the yarn and I'll wash it out later. And I'd come back the next day or 2 days later and the color was significantly darker. So much so it just changed all my recipes. So,
wow. Okay, how cool though that you discovered that randomly. That's amazing.
Yeah. And so I was like, oh, well, that is something I was not expecting. And it's changed all sorts of ways that I understand my dyes. And that's just in the last couple of years. But yeah, it took a couple of years and a couple of children to figure that one out.
Okay, but isn't that the fun part of it though? I think that when they think about, weaving or dyeing or any of those kind of fiber corners of the fiber world, that they're like, well, you learn so much and then you're like, okay, then you're good. You're like, no. You try one thing and it changes the entire game. Like there's still pivotal moments when you're still learning. And isn't that wonderful to have that kind of excitement that you can be like, oh, this is a game changer. I'm going to rethink things.
I have 1,000 projects in my head for things that I will weave when I can get back to the loom, because I'm painting the colors on the yarn. I'm like, oh, those are pretty. What would they look like woven together? And I just don't know.
Yes, for sure.
I'm trying to find people to weave it for me because I want to weave it myself. I love weaving, but I don't have time and I just want to see what it looks like. And you can only know so much until you do it. And with weaving, it's like, oh, well, what if you do plain weave? What if you do blocks? What if you do pattern? What if you do really complicated pattern? It's just never ending. All the exploring you can do. And it's fun and I don't ever see it coming to an end. So
see, I love that. So I know you and I chatted briefly before we started about we're at a common event coming up. You want to talk about that?
Yeah, I'm going to teach my first full one-day workshop at the Midwest Weaving Conference in Des Moines, Iowa on June something.
When is that? The 12th through the 17th, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, I am teaching that Monday, and then I will be vending at the vendor show. I think it's Thursday, Friday, Saturday, so I'll be there for that as well. But yeah, I'll be teaching this big one-day workshop, and I'm excited to meet my guinea pig group of students. I think we're gonna have a lot of fun. I hope I impart the information that they can carry with them, but at the very least, they'll know how to get a hold of me if they have questions later.
Yeah. Well, and I find the times that I've been in position to do that is that so much of it is just about your passion and enthusiasm for the topic. I mean, people may not remember all the details, but they'll remember the kind of magic of putting the yarn in one color and then when it's done, it's completely different color. They'll remember those parts of it. So you're gonna do great.
Oh, thank you. And that's good to hear that they'll forget all the foibles.
They're pretty forgiving generally. Yeah, they're pretty forgiving.
But it's going to be fun. I've been dyeing samples for this class and I don't know what it is. I just love dyeing samples. It's really, I remember Roland really, because whenever you look inside of a natural dye book, it's all about sampling. And you get really annoyed by these books because it's like I work to scale. I'm like a small farmer, and it's like they don't ever teach you like how to scale up your results in these books. Like how do you dye a real quantity amount with 20 flowers? You just don't.
Right. Yes.
And it is a good point. If you come up with you can sample forever, but at some point you probably want to scale up. So
yeah.
But there's something really fun about sampling because I'm just constantly wondering, like, what happens if I do this plus this, and I want to know, and so you have to sample, and you have all these just like hundreds of just little yarn bits that I don't know if I'll ever use them again, but I have them. But and now I have some for this class I'm hoping to hand out, and so we'll see what happens.
I love that. I love that. When I was fortunate enough to go to Convergence last August, and one of the day trips we went to like a historic farm, and they had an entire dye garden, and they had like an outbuilding they had converted into kind of a little bit of history about weaving and dyeing and all this kind of stuff. And the samples from their dye garden were outrageous. And now I am not a dyer at all, but I could not believe the kind of breadth of colors and the intensity that they were able to get. I was really stunned because I've always kind of, I mean, I'll be honest, I think the natural dyers are a little bit crazy. I mean, that is because you just have just zero control about, is this batch of marigolds going to produce the same as this batch? I mean, I think that takes a certain kind of, bravery. That is just, so
that's my studio mate. All of the work behind me is my studio mate, by the way. None of that's me.
It's beautiful.
Jean Haley Dye and Design. She's a natural dyer and a rug hooker. So
amazing.
He knows all of that. But yeah, it's taken her a long time to figure that out too. How to get at least some consistency in results, or to know where you're headed, and also to know that your dyes are going to stick around. She knows a lot. She's learned a lot about that over the years. She's very, very particular about using natural dyes that don't just go away. They just one we learned about was logwood. Everybody loves logwood, but it fades. It fades into like a gray silver, and it does it pretty quickly. So,
wow. Okay, but what a fun partnership between the two of you, though. I think that's brilliant that you share a studio with a dyer. I mean, and you are doing all the hand dyed works. I mean, that's amazing.
She did some dyeing for me. I have her in my shop. I have a line of naturally dyed yarn she did for me, but it was tricky for her because the results were harder to be predictable on Tencel for some reason. And I think it's because she primarily works in wool. Natural dye works great with wool. It's a little harder with cellulose fibers, especially with the sort of like filament and rayon that I'm using. Which Tencel is a type of rayon. So it wouldn't cooperate sometimes. There was a couple of colors she was able to sample that were beautiful, and then she would try to scale it up, and it was totally different. And it's just because there's so many steps between, like preparing your yarn for dyeing naturally and then actually dyeing it. So I know she learned a lot through the process, and I let her learn that because I didn't have time to learn all that.
Right.
That's why I hired her. It's like, it's too much information. You do it.
Exactly. Okay, so Amanda, when you come to the studio, what does a typical day look like for you? What are you usually working on?
I'm dyeing something when I come in here. So my studio is not at my home is where all my weaving stuff is, and then my studio in town is where all my dyeing stuff is. And I have space in an old lumber building in Bloomington.
Ooh,
it's
cool.
A cool building. I have there's a quilt, like a fabric store / tailor shop right above me, and there's a doggy daycare also right above me. I'm surprised you can't hear them barking. There's a cement mason, a blacksmith, it's a company that's working on some sort of drone for 3D printing buildings or something. I don't know what they're doing, but it's there's like just pallets of really interesting things outside.
It sounds like a real eclectic mix, though, of the area that you're in. That's awesome.
It is. The owner, the person that ran the lumber company owns this building, and so he's just renting it out to whoever will take it. So I got this really great deal on this. It's a basement studio, but it's big enough that that we can, and it's a basement, so we can mess it up with all of the dollars and flashing and everything we do. But yeah, so I'll come in and usually I'm either because all of my yarn I have to hand measure everything. All my yarn comes on cones. I haven't figured out a way to get it skeined any other way than to just do it myself. So I have to wind skeins, or I have to wind warps. or I have somebody that now winds warps for me. I'm hoping to have somebody who winds skeins for me too. But
Yeah,
I can't
please.
do that. Then
Yeah, that would help.
I got to scour those out, wash them out, so that the dye is not resisted by anything on the yarn. And then I have to mix the dye, which comes from a powder, so I have to be really careful. I use a MX dyes, which is it's a fiber reactive dye that's very potent.
Okay.
And so I have to be really careful, since my studio mate is a natural dyer, that I keep it contained. And so
I was gonna say, I'm envisioning like hazmat suits and the serious gloves and all. It's not that. It's just
I do actually have, and it's in my blog. I posted some images of it. It created a vent hood out of a bench top blast cabinet from Harbor Freight. So it looks really intense. And I took this, somebody had an old shop vac, like really old shop vac that's like square, and I taped it to the back of this thing, and so you can operate inside of this box and turn it on, and none of the dust gets out of it. And there's it's designed for sandblasting, so there's like gloves and everything going on. And I put it on an old what do they call transparent, or what is it, the cart they used to wheel around in school? They had the
projector. Yes, yeah, where they can project the image. Yeah.
Like an old cart from the surplus store at IU, and I wheel it around. So I mix my dyes, and then I paint or do dyeing, and then I gotta wash it all out. So it's a long process. It takes
multi-step.
I try to group it so that I'm not doing just one. I'm not painting one skein at a time, but it is a little bit intensive trying to get it go from beginning to end. The yarn has to get washed and boiled twice in the process along the way. And yeah.
Wow. Amazing. Okay, so
anymore.
Oh, you'll get there.
I will.
No worries. So the yarn, you sell, all the lengths are the same? Is that how you have like a standard size?
The standard size. The skeins are all 4 ounces, and the warps are all either 6 yards, or now we're starting to offer 4.5 yards. I mostly did that because at the end of last year, I ran out of yarn, and I had to start making shorter warps to accommodate my decreasing supply of yarn. I
understand that.
Now it's just an option. Also, ring spun cotton is becoming an option in my shop. That was another one. I did a trade with Catherine Weber of Blazing Shuttles, who, if you went to the conference last, the Convergence, she had her studio tour, and I'm real jealous because I've always wanted to go see her beautiful mothership.
Yeah, right.
She was a fantastic person. We did a trade a long time ago, and I had this yarn that had just been sitting there forever, and I ran out of Tencel, so I started doing this ring spun cotton, and it's gorgeous yarn. I've never used it for weaving. I really want to use it for weaving. I have some stockpile because my son sometimes comes in and dyes yarn, and he's 4, so it's just whatever old dyes in the fridge, he just kind of like dumps all over yarn, and it's beautiful. My 4-year-old can dump dye on yarn, and it's beautiful. And so
then yes, if the 4-year-old can make something beautiful, that's awesome.
I actually sold a couple of his skeins for someone, and they were shocked. They're like, "This is really nice."
It's college fund. Might as well start somewhere. It's
gotta start now. But,
right.
So I have some skeins of ring spun cotton. I'm pretty much out of it, but I'm about to do another trade for more yarn. So
okay, what are you saying? Ring spun cotton? What does that mean?
It's just the way that it's spun. That's what the label says. I don't actually know what it means.
Okay. Fair enough. I was just curious. I hadn't heard that before.
Somebody out there is going to scream at this video.
Let's refer back to our earlier comment. Our community is lovely. They won't scream. They'll be like, here's what ring spun means, which is great. I rely on that.
I believe I looked it up one time, and I thought, okay, it's something technical about the way that they use the cotton or the way that they spin the cotton. But it's sort of, it's lofty, it's bouncy, it's matte. So it's very different from the Tencel. It's very, it's absorbent. So a lot of people like to weave towels with it, but it's like the soft, it's like cotton clouds soft. It's just, it's lovely stuff. So
sounds like it. It's a big endorsement. Yeah. We'll definitely look that up for sure. Yeah.
Coming soon.
Okay, so normally in my interviews, then I ask if folks have a particular tip. Now you tossed out one casually before, but do you have another tip for the folks watching? Anything about Tencel or dyeing or something, or whatever you like?
Tencel are dying. I did recently do some recordings in my studio of, I noticed on Facebook, a lot of people are having trouble dyeing Tencel yarn or any yarn in particular, because it tends to turn into what some people call ramen noodles. It turns into it's like
Well, that's
tangly, noodly mess. And so I think one of my tips was this thing, which is a zip tie, specifically a reusable one, so you can close it and you can open it again.
Brilliant.
I use them all the time in my skin. I don't know how much you can see of this.
Pretty. Yes, we can totally see that. That's gorgeous.
But yeah, so it's in a nice, like it's not tangled at all. And one of the ways I do that is from the minute I put my yarn in water to the minute I'm hanging it to dry, I keep it on a zip tie. It gives me a way to grab the skein while it's wet, so that I'm not just grabbing it somewhere in the middle and yanking all the yarns up in weird ways. And then you can also kind of scooch it around while you're dyeing really easily. And then when you're dipping it in and out of the water, the weight of the water will kind of help to straighten the yarns out. So I'm getting ready to attempt to make a video of me going through the process of how to dye yarn without turning it into a tangly mess, where I also show you a very tangled mess I made like 2 weeks ago.
I like it. This is real life. Yes.
Yeah, so I like made every single mistake with this one group of yarn. So I'm like, it's just part of it. You're gonna do it sometimes.
Right.
But
I love the zip tie tip. That's fabulous. Yeah, very nice.
Yeah, the reclosable ones are handy. They don't last forever, but they last quite a while. I mean, you can tell I boiled it a number of times because it's permanently in a round shape. But yeah, they're
That's what you need it for anyways. Yeah, that's awesome.
It's a little annoying that it has the tail on it. Sometimes that tail catches on your yarn while it's yeah, but I haven't found anything else. Like you could tie like a ring, but then you got to find the ring. You could use those binder clips, but the binder clips have little like little hinges on them that catch on yarn and actually kind of tear at the yarn a little bit sometimes. So this has been my best bet so far.
There
and
we
they're
go.
easy to come across.
I love that. Very nice. Okay, so I have a series of rapid fire questions for you. Are you game?
I think so.
Okay, I know, right? Okay, you've kind of already answered this, but what is your favorite fiber?
Tencel.
Tencel, we love that. Okay, if you had to choose like one favorite loom that was your only one to work with, what would it be?
My AVL. I love my, no, wait. Oh shoot, this is gonna be hard because I have 2 looms and you know what, I'm if I only had one loom ever, it would be my AVL because I could do everything on my AVL. But if I could have 2, I also love my Maycomber. I'm a Maycomber lady. Not as much a shock lady as I am a Maycomber lady. I think it's whatever you learn to weave on first, that's what you prefer.
Yeah, there's something to that. No, for sure. Okay, back to front or front to back?
Back to front is better, and I'm trying to get better at doing it. And that's what I want to do more of. But I learned front to back.
Oh, interesting. Oh, okay. That's an interesting answer. People don't usually pause. They're usually one or the other. That's interesting that you've experienced both.
It depends on what I'm doing, because there's times when I'm designing color at the loom, it kind of like in patterns, or I haven't made decisions yet on how I want to lay out my colors. I really want to go front to back on that because I can lay it out in the reed. But my tension is always better back to front. So.
Oh, I love that. See how smart you are. Okay, what is your go-to weaving book or weaving resource?
Go-to weaving book or weaving resource would be that one with the reed chart in it, the little Weaver's Companion.
Oh, yeah, I know what you mean. It has a little flip. It's a little flip book, right?
Yep, I need that reed chart a lot.
Is it just called the Weaver's Companion? We'll have to look this up. I'll put a link in the notes for us for that. So. Yeah. Oh, that's a good one. I forgot about that. I don't have that one. I know what you're talking about though. Yes.
Yeah, that would be one of my favorite go-tos. I think it's just really quick. Like, this is what you need to know.
Yeah, perfect. Okay. Last question. Why is weaving good for you?
It is a healing process, and it is a rhythmic process that involves your entire being. That's why I do it.
Oh, I love it. Okay. All the little hairs just stood up on my arm. That was such a good answer. See,
It is
brava. Okay. Yeah, go ahead.
because as you can tell by the way that I talk, my brain is never focused on one thing at a time. It's going 5,000 directions at once. Weaving is the only thing I can do where my brain shuts down. And I think it's because it's a whole body rhythmic process. And once I get into the rhythm of it, it just quiets everything down. So that's why I do.
Love that. Giving you a break from all of the million things going on in your head.
It takes a solid 20 minutes of weaving to get there, but I get there.
Sure. Well, you have to kind of unplug, don't you? I mean, that's
it does. It takes a good 20 minutes to shut my brain down.
That's awesome. Very good. Well, tell people how they can find you.
I am at shinydimefibers.com. That's where you can find me and my email and all the stuff and things. I'm in person. I'm not sure where I'm going to be yet in the fall. I just came from the one up in Greencastle, the show in Greencastle, Indiana.
Nice.
I was going to do the show at Franklin, but I think it's too close to the conference coming up. So gotcha. Sometime in the fall, I'll be doing other Indiana shows. Keep an eye out for me.
Nice. Well, and you do a lovely job.
Know where I'll be.
Right? You do a lovely job with your little email newsletter that you send out is always so nice. So people definitely should be subscribing to your emails for sure.
Consistent as you one day. I'm getting more and more consistent, but it's like this week I was like, it's my anniversary. That was yesterday, and nobody got an email. Oh, sorry. I was too busy enjoying my anniversary day.
Absolutely, as you should for sure. Well, yes, I'll definitely put up all the information about how people can find you and subscribe to you. And you do the kind of I know you're at least on Facebook, right? You got some social media.
I do Facebook from time to time. I have an Instagram account I'll do a few times a year.
Yeah.
all the handles are all Shiny Dime Fibers, so you can find me pretty easily that way. But yeah, I do spend a little time on Facebook, but not a lot. Some people have reached out to me through the messenger and they might not hear from me for a while. I also tell people if they email me and I don't respond within a week, just copy, paste, and send again and get on top of my inbox, because my inbox is a nightmare. And sometimes it just disappear in all this junk that I get that I'm terrible. I know there's some management there that I need to do, and I've got currently 10,000 emails to delete. Once I do, I'll find your emails. So
it is the ongoing challenge of being an entrepreneur. That is for sure. But you're doing a great job, and certainly I would encourage everyone who is watching to sign up for the email list. That's such a great resource, and you're always putting up when you have sales or new products, or I love your little contests. You're always looking for people to actually show projects with your products, which I think is brilliant. I love that.
I'd love to see more of that. If you're listening and you've woven with my yarn, as you can tell, I don't have time to weave with my yarn. Part of the reason I do that is because I want to see what my yarn looks like woven, and the only way I can do that is to have people send me pictures or button it, knitted, or whatever. It's my way of sharing with the community what yarn looks like when you use it, because I just don't have time. And people are out there doing amazing things, and I love seeing what they do. It's such a bright part of what I do is when they send me pictures and say, look at what I made with it. It's our little artistic collaboration. I dyed it, and then you did something with it that I would never have done. Yeah. And so it's great. So it's just, everybody keep sending me pictures, put them on Instagram. I don't care where you put them. Just
right. Yeah, no, it's fabulous. Well, and I love that. That's really becomes kind of part of the whole community part of it too, I think, which is so wonderful to connect, what you're creating with all those fabulous weavers out there.
And if I can make one last plug,
of course, please.
I did this in my newsletter recently, but I'm going to continue to do it. My friend,
names are hard. I understand.
It's a children thing. Barrett. Yes.
What's her name, my dear?
Debbie Barrett Jones. She has a project called Healing with Weaving. So Healing with Weaving is a community project where she creates wind looms, and then people sit down and they work through either as a community just to learn how to meditate at the loom, or work through emotional trauma. She's trying to offer them at hospitals or just in community settings. And I know she's got other plans and ideas, but we wanted to support that project, which is very, I mean, it goes hand in hand with what I believe weaving is for. So I would definitely go support her if you could.
Yeah. Tell us her name again.
It's Debbie Barrett Jones, and her
okay.
website is just healingwithweaving dot something.
Yeah, I'll find it. I'll put it. Yeah, I'll make sure it's in our notes for this episode for sure. Yeah, thank you.
Person. And you can then see where I learned how to paint my Tencel, because she has been weaving all of these years, and she's a fantastic artist. And you can see all of her dyed yarns. and
Love that.
Get it? That's where she learned it from. So.
Right? See how fabulous. Well, thank you so much for spending a little time with us today. It was really wonderful to hear all about you and your business and your fabulous art form that you're practicing over there. So thank you so much.
Thank you for inviting me. And if I think of names and realize I told them to you wrong, I will tell you later.
Excellent. No worries.
I just send you a list of all the names I named off today. I'm not sure I told you the right people. That's
all right. That's all right. We'll I know how to edit a video. Don't you worry, my friend. We'll take care from there. Thank you so much, my friend.
Thank you.
Okay, come on. How cool is she? She's so much fun. And her products, they're stunning. If you haven't had a chance to go look at or interact with her yarn yet, it is really beautiful. Like her sense of color and just kind of rhythm is so good. I have had the chance to work with her hand painted warps before, and they're a joy. They're so much fun to work with. And I sincerely hope that you will check out the website, sign up for the emails, and buy all the things, because she does really, really good work. So I hope that you enjoyed getting to know Amanda Baxter with Shiny Dime Fibers, and we'll look forward to many more fun fiber interviews to come. All right, you guys, have a great week. Happy weaving.